Strategic Money shares. It's the 18th of July 2023, and I'm out doing a job with machinery and just coming in for a minute and just make a couple of videos on things that I'm finding out. My channel, I tend to do an awful lot of videos on stuff that people tell me, tragedies and how to avoid tragedies. I actually hate to see a person getting into trouble or being fooled in some way that others were fooled before. And some people are fooled the same way. Now, I have a degree in business studies, and what I'm giving you here is strategic advice. It's not legal advice. I can't give you legal advice. You're not my client, and I can't have to issue a disclaimer and say I can't be held responsible for legal advice. But strategic advice is the general advice, how you live your life, what decisions you make, and all to that. And we all have to do it. A youngster has to try and choose a career. That's a strategic decision, okay? So, strategic money and shares. I know an awful lot of people who got caught before the last economic collapse. One person bought a property he wanted to operate his office in, and he paid a lot of money for it, over 700,000, just in the middle of the boom. And he could run his business and he could let some of the apartments and that in it. But the crash came and he couldn't get customers to rent to, and he wasn't able to pay the mortgage, and it was taken off him and sold to somebody for 230,000. He's just lost possession of the property. He bought too dear. He thought this would never end. At the moment, it's hard to know with the land and housing market. Just, is it a bubble? It could be a bubble. It's coming near to a bubble. The problem is that in 2006 and 2007, there was not much inflation because the Germans feared it. Now, I've just done a previous video on inflation. If you can't get it through your head, I'm afraid you're a lost cause. I can't do any more. I can't understand it. You're just something I want, and I can't do anything with that. So if inflation is rampant, it's very hard to know if a thing is dear or cheap. At the moment, inflation has been rising sometimes by 10% a year. So if prices goes up 10%, you're just standing still. So yeah, that's a skill, and it's a complex skill. But before the crash, there was very little inflation because the Germans didn't want to print money, and there was a boom. Good on you, Paddy, you know all that. And banks were throwing out money, and if you got a loan to buy a house, they'd give you a loan to buy it cheap as well. Now, that's the kind of gung-ho situation you have. Now, at the time of the boom, a lot of people come into money. Now, people may say to me, well, sure, it's nothing to do with me, I don't have any money. Well, I know somebody who had damn all, and an old relative died and had a bit of land. Sort of fly here. 30 or 40 acres. Had a bit of land and left it to him. And in fairness, it was boggy enough. It wasn't that good a land. It had a feature that some people coming from afar might think was quaint and good. In any event, he put it up for sale, and he was into farming, but I don't think he wanted to farm there. And there's an old house on it. He put it up for sale, and he got 700,000+ before the boom, before the crash, about 2007. So this was a bit away from here and where I am. It was in a good enough part of the country. I don't want to say, but it'd be south east of here, about 52 or 3 miles away. But in any event, he got the money and he went into the bank to lodge it in the bank. And just as he sold it, he had his eye on a property. About 10 miles away, maybe 15 miles away, a good bit of land, better farming land, and he already had his own house. And he started bidding on it, and he got it at about 380,000. And this is in 2007, so it was a good bit of ground. He was happy with that. His intention was to go take out the 380,000 from his 700, lodge the rest in the bank. He had his place free, and he had the 320,000 to do what he wished with. And when he went into the bank, man, The bankman seen them coming with 700,000. Once you go into the bank with anything north of 50,000, they are very wary of you. They don't want taking it because they owe you that money. If they give that out a loan to someone and they renege, the bank has to pay you. Your money's safe on deposit. But he came along and they said to him, you know what you'll do? We'll give you a loan for the farm you're after buying, the 380,000. We'll give you a good offer on a loan. Borrow the money for the loan. And you put 7,000 in the bank in shares. Put it into shares. And he went for that. Hook, line and sinker. Now just see what they were doing. He was getting a loan for 380,000 from the bank of what somebody else possibly put in or whatever, and he was investing in the bank shares to the tune of 700. So they could take the 700, they could give him the 380,000 out of his 700 in the shares, and they still had 320 left over, and it was their money. It was invested in the bank. He was entitled to none of it. He could sell the shares or he could do what he liked with them. They told him, of course, the value of the shares can go up as well as down, and they told him, look, our shares are going real well, so they're going to keep their value. See now? And he fell for this. And the crash came, and his shares was worth sweet Fanny Adam. They were worth virtually nothing. I don't know what they're worth now, but that's a long time ago. Now just think what happened then. His shares were worth maybe 10,000 at best. He had 700 plus thousand in it, in the shares. He had a loan to the bank for 380. He owed them, and he had to pay it, and he's still paying it out of his work check. After him having a farm of his own and 700,000, I think that's the figure. And then the situation was the stock price fell. The bank was in no bother. It had his money. It had given him out the money on loan, and they're now getting interest on the money that was his money to begin with. He had the money to buy the farm in cash, and he ended up paying interest on his own money because he put his money into shares. I know another person in a county town who had the bit of a farm on the outskirts of the town, and all these new stores wanted to build on it. McDonald's and what other, these other stores, McDonald's and these ones, and open up shopping centres and all that. I'm not going to it. And he sold. And between the jigs and the reels, he got over 5 million. He knew how to strike a hard bargain. He was a tough cookie. He was nobody's fool. I myself remember, and know people who remember him making hay. And he got his check. I think it was 5.8, and of course he bought a big car and all the rest. Did all the usual things, and the wife got a car and all this. Great job. Didn't exactly endear him to other members of the family who thought he could give them a few pounds. But that's another day's work. And in he goes to the bank. Now he did buy a couple of properties that were poor buying. They were not good buying. I wouldn't buy them. I wouldn't buy any property unless it was living near it and could keep an eye on it, to tell you the truth. But he wasted a bit that way, but that wasn't so bad. He still had the old shell of buildings and all that. But he put a load of it into shares. The bank saw him coming in with the check, several million. My hands are dirty, by the way, because I'm doing mechanical work. They seen the story. What are we going to do with all this money? We'll owe this to him. And they persuaded him to put it into shares. And he swallowed it hook, line and sinker. Meanwhile, the thing collapsed. I don't know what shares are going at the minute. But I do know that it knocked his lights out. And he tried suing them because they didn't give him the correct information, and he lost. because all they have to do is tell you that the value of your shares can go up as well as down. And I could have told him that was a foolish thing to do. At the very worst, if he had to put $1 million into shares and put the rest on deposit in various banks or do something like that, but he didn't. And it made him into a pauper. It destroyed him. It left him, he didn't even own his own house. And his family and all the rest. Imagine going from 5 million to being put out of your own house. Imagine paying interest in 2023 on land for which you had double the amount of cash needed to buy it. Watch shares. Legally and in principle, if you have shares in a company and you're one of people with 1,000 shares and you're a shareholder and you have one share, you own 1,000 of that company. But it doesn't work like that. They have the law all twisted, that the directors can issue new shares and dilute your shares. Many of the wind farms now looking for shareholders will tell you you can't vote. You have no voting rights. If you were a proper shareholder and you had, let's say, a 1% interest in a company, you can go to the meeting and vote for your shareholders, for your board, in accordance with the value of your shares. So if you could acquire 51% of the shares in any company, if you could get them, you could fire the whole board and put in a whole new board. Moreover, you have to get the dividend paid and you can vote on the dividend. But they don't let that happen. They have a way of making sure that if you come in, you don't have a voting right. So if you're buying shares, check and see, have you a voting right? Check and see what the law is on the dilution. So we'll say a company has a factory in Navan and is doing well and it wants to open an outlet in England. It can have that as a separate company and put separate shares in there. And all you have is you've only shares in the Irish company. And that is a fraud, because you invested in the management of that company and all the things they did. And if they did wonderful things in years to come, that was your good luck, you judged it. But they have you cheated. They'll keep you only on the Irish section. So you need to check that. The other thing, even you go, I'll just pick a company, I know nothing about them, I don't have the shares. We'll say Chadwicks in Navan, the builder supplier. You buy shares in that, you have 10% of the shareholding. And they can come along and issue 50% more. And that means that your 10% is now only worth 7.5%. So you need to get advice on that. That needs to be checked. That they can't rob you by diluting your share. In other words, you should be you have a limited amount of shares. As the value of the company goes up, the value of your shares should go up. But they cheat you by issuing new shares to their friends. And of course, their friends won't buy these shares when the company's struggling. They'll wait to see how it's going. And when it goes to go well, and you had it well judged, this is a great call, you like this company, and this is a great company, they should look after you. You should have a say in who gets into shareholding, and if they issue new shares, it should be for specific spending. So if they're going to we said they're an engineering company, they might want, like McHale Engineering, they might want to expand into, as well as balers, they might want to do moors. So they might say, right, we have your share here for the baler section, we want to buy more shares, issue more shares to put up a moor plant. And that's all right, because they've already proven themselves in the baler plant, and now other people are going to invest in the moor plant. And you can't expect that if you want to be in the moor plant, you'd have to buy these shares, but you should get first call on them. But in any event, you can't make the law so strict that they can't issue new shareholding, but it should be for a specific purpose. But in reality, it's not usually. It's to dilute you and leave you with less of a say in the company. Now, these are complex things, and like I say, the law is complex. The Companies Act, it's talk about planning and development. It took me years to get in on it, and I studied the Companies Act, and they changed it and made it into one act. I had a good study of it in my course. So you want to watch that. But the main point to remember is, if you have a ball of money, you have a lump of money, 150,000. When you go near that bank, the red lights are blinking. When your man went in with the 700,000, there was red lights above in Dublin blinking, where he lived. They have a map up there, and it's blinking. We have 700,000. When the fella down the country come in with 5.8 million, there's two red lights and a beacon blinking. Oh my God, if we take this fella's deposit, how are we going to pay him back? You see? But right, the thing to do was, don't give it all to them. Lodge it and then split it up in different banks in case any of them goes down. And if you're going to buy shares, why buy them in banking? Why not buy them in Kingspan? Why not buy them in Moffat Engineering if there's such a place? Why not buy them in Chadwick's? CRH. Why always need you buy it in banking? There is no more volatile share than banking shares. No more. There's no share. I mean, Anglo-Irish Bank fell from, I think it was 14 something to nothing. And look at all that got caught there. And look at all the caught there. And look at how Quinn got caught. Shares are not for the faint-hearted. If you have them in a thing like CRH or some of those, you needn't worry too much. You'll get something for them. But I've given you a few pointers. I'm not your advisor, I'm not your legal expert. But when you get a ball of money, when you have the full of that, €100 notes, and maybe the full of a big bag the size of a coal bag, you're a queer boy. Every criminal wants to rob it off you if they could get it in cash, and everyone around wants to get their hands on it. And they may not know you have it, or they may know you have it. The safest place is to go into the bank, and when you go into the bank, you are creating an alarm. And the way they diffuse the alarm is they get you to buy shares in the bank, they get you in to buy the shares, and therefore they owe you nothing. If they don't want to give you anything, they need never pay you anything. That people have learned that at such an expense. Imagine paying your back your loan and the interest on a bit of land for which you had the money to buy the day you bought it, and you threw it away on some ignoramus scheme. It is not right. I don't think the value of the shares going up or down is enough of advice. I think there should be a video or something produced. But hopefully my video will do a little. Be very wary of being asked to buy shares in anything. You're better off looking up the portfolio or go to a stockbroker and get a bit of advice and pay him a few bob and widen out your spread and keep it limited. And in the end of the day, in 2008, those who left their money in the bank were the safest. And I had a personal experience of that because I built a shed under the Farm Waste Management Scheme in 2008. And I was promised a grant which came to something like €54,000. I got about 60% of a grant. And I had to pay a bit myself as well, of course. But this was a scheme anyway. But I was promised the money, and I did the job right and got it inspected and got everything right, and everyone was happy enough. And I worked terrible hard, worked very hard, and I built a shed that was to kill for its best shed in the country. Real good resource. And faced it the right way and all. And I built the shed, and when the blooming shed was built, I only got half the grant. The government collapsed. There was no money. And I got a letter to say that they can't pay me, and I got a letter to ask the banks not to seize or to foreclose on any loan to build the thing. And as it happened, I did a lot of the work myself. The bank respected the government's letter. The government told us we will pay you. I thought they'd probably never pay me, I think it was something like 25,000 or something. But I used to go in to the mart and that, and I'd be in the pub, I'd be talking to other farmers, and they were panicking too, and they were onto their TDs, and the word was, you will be paid. You will be paid. They had decided, come hell or high water, we would be paid, with interest. And sure enough, as the conditions improved, about 2011, I got half of it, and then I got it all. And about a year later, I got the interest, and I think it was a good bit of interest, a nice little bit of interest. So they did pay their debt. That's all right. That's understandable. I'd rather have the bank owe me the money and getting paid whenever they can than having your share gone in there, the share price collapses, and there's no comeback. You lose nearly it all. Now, have I made that clear? I hope I've made it clear. It's a boring old subject, but I would say I know 4 in my own circle going in the whole area that I meet. I only know a bit. I'd say that I only know about 5%, maybe 6% of Ireland. So there's 94% people. For the 4 I know, there's 94 by 4. There's about 380 people who got stung in the way I'm telling you, who lost a whole lot and can't even change the car, and may be evicted out of their houses and are living in caravans, who had millions upon millions of euros. That seems strange. I'm telling you, I know that happened, and I can't do any more than that. If people want to bull on and think they know it all, go right ahead. They'll never tell you. I only can find out by the back door or by other means, sometimes when the poor people are dead. So that's the story. That's it. They didn't catch me. They didn't catch me because I had a course done and I knew the crack. And coming up to that break in 2008, people rang me to tell me there's a bank going to collapse 6 weeks before the Anglo-Irish Bank collapsed. I'd say if I had to have 10,000 in there, I could have got it out. If I had to go up and look for it. The word was out. All the cute boys knew about it. The ordinary man will be the last to know. All the cute boy knows. And when it comes to shares, they are tipped off before the real collapse come, and they pull their money, leaving nothing for the poor old devil that doesn't know what's happening. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down. Making money is difficult, but keeping money is a lot more difficult. Good luck, and please comment underneath and give me a bit of a guff there from somebody, a bit of old fun, right? Thank you.